type it, your voice matters. Not only to me as we go through this session, but I know that your voice matters to Eric, it matters to Amy, it matters to Kevin, like all of the people who are here supporting the Vanguard program within Frederick, and you all as teachers and educators inside of the district really care a lot about you. And so use your voice and advocate for things, and bring up topics and areas that you really want to push forward. All right, so day one that we're going to spend together is really going to be focused on leading by example. And that's, again, what you all have spent the last year doing, right? You have really moved out of this first phase and into a place where you're leading. So we're going to reflect on your year as a leader, and it's been a tremendously difficult year to lead in, no matter what kind of leadership capacity you've been in, right? And so I really loved this quote, and it's by Howard Gardner, but I actually stole it from a guy that we're going to talk about a little later on, Brad Montague, but he uses this one a lot. Great leaders remind people who they are. So as we reflect on this year, I really want you to reflect not only on your personal reactions, your personal goals met, et cetera, but really in what ways have you helped remind people who they are? And that's a really challenging question. So I'm going to open it up just to respond to that quote first before we get into a little bit of a guided activity. But does anyone have a quick response to that? Any idea how you have helped remind people who they are? Don't all jump at once. All right, first person to unmute and answer this. I did ship a couple of extra little surprises to you, Eric. So we'll give some swaggy to the people who are going to be brave. So anyone want to jump in on this one? How have you helped remind people who they are?
I would say really quickly by making sure that, like, even when, and I know I go through this individually as well, but like when my coworkers, when my teammates are feeling like they're not enough, like they're not doing something well enough, like they're not reaching enough of their students, to make sure that I'm like ready with some sort of specific example for them of something that I have witnessed them do, or I've heard from another student in the building that they have done, to help show that, like, even sometimes when it feels like you're toiling and it's almost like futile, like we are making those connections, right? Like we are reaching those kids, we are making it happen, to try to remind ourselves to sort of recenter and get back to that positive, because right now there's just so much negative.
Yeah, I love that, Heather. And it's about mindsets, right? I know you all have, had the deep dive into sort of this idea of fixed versus growth, but it's always so much harder to treat yourself and have an internal monologue that has growth and positivity and affirmation than it is to do that for other people. So I love your example about how you remind other people of who they are, but we have to do a little bit of that for ourselves too sometimes, right? Anyone else have a great example? And Heather, just so that you know, we will get you a copy of Brad Montague's Becoming Better Grown-Ups book. Thank you for being brave and going first. Anyone else have thoughts around this? I also want to flip the question a little bit. And how have you had a leader that helps remind you of who you are in this phase of being a leader yourself? Do you have school-based leaders? Do you have people who are here on the team that you know you can connect with that have helped remind you who you are as you've gone through this difficult year?
I think making sure that people know that they have a voice, even just as you just did for us. I think about my former principal and what I loved about her, and she always made sure our voices mattered. And I think that validates that it gives us value. And I think that's important.
Yeah, great point. Anyone else have, someone that they would call out as really enabling them to see who they are through this year as a leader, or an example of what that would be? So something that I'll share. Oh, go ahead. Somebody came off mute.
I came off mute because I know Cindy Doggett is here, and she's always such a great leader with the students and the teachers, always telling them wonderful, wonderful things, making them feel good about themselves. And also my department chair, who's not a Vanguarder, but Stacy Bureau is just so amazing with that. And she's taught me in so many ways, like how to approach a kid when they're not engaging and how to bring them up as well. So those are two people I think of that really lead that way.
I love it. Matt, you're cracking me up in the chat. That's fantastic. I'll keep working to think about something too. Being encouraged to take risks. Yeah, and you know what? That comes by seeing people take risks, right? So that was actually the story that I was going to share. You know, through this time, like all of you, I've been wearing different hats, and it can become really just in survival mode. Did anybody feel that at any part over the last year? You would have felt this anyway had there not been a global pandemic, right? Like when you're charged with leading by example, you get a little bit sort of, let's just keep the thing, and like put on the blinders. I know you guys know what Amish horse blinders look like because you live up there, but people in the South don't know what I mean when I say that. So like put on your blinders and like truck down the road. This year specifically, I've had people challenge me and encourage me to take risks, and it has led to more value and more being able to see who I am and what I can accomplish, just having other people, even just Kathleen, what you just did, and like call people out by name. How empowering is that to hear your name spoken in gratitude or in thanks or in encouragement or in challenge? You know, sometimes I need to hear from people, you're phoning it in, Stevens. Like you're not bringing all your effort and energy out for this. Like, you know, you could show up and it would be fine, but like, is it your best? Are you doing a great job? Are you really pushing forward? And having that kind of encouragement from somebody that I trust and that I also see modeling it, right? Because just like the old, let's all sit in the cafeteria and hear somebody tell us how to teach that hasn't been in a classroom for 15, 20 years, right? Everybody loves those meetings. I feel the same way about leading and being challenged. I want somebody to be a great leader and be challenged and show their challenge if they're going to tell me to do the same thing. So I'm going to do our first activity here, and I hope that you will play along with me. If you have a piece of paper and something to write with handy. We might be doing a few of these little tactile, sketchy kinds of things throughout. So it doesn't have to be anything you're turning in or anything super wonderful. But I always like to use an ink that's at least dark enough that you can see if I hold it up and share it on the screen. So there is a really great way to acknowledge the efforts and energies of people, and it's just a really simple sentence starter. So we're going to do this, and I want you to also feel okay if you want to do this as a self-reflection, right? So that'll make more sense here in a second. But it's really just, you're going to start the sentence with I am, and then it's going to be a blank. And then you're going to say, because you, and then another blank. Okay, so this is what it's going to kind of look like. Sorry, I have my blur on, but it's just I am blank because you blank. All right, and I want you to fill this in. So I can totally make this about myself if I want to. Like, I am more confident because you take risks and step outside your comfort zone. Right? So that's a self-reflective, like I can acknowledge that about myself. I can thank myself for getting a little uncomfortable, but I can also make it about somebody else. So I am always going to stay at the flagship Marriott hotels because Eric and Kevin gave me a ton of crap the first time I stayed at the wrong location. Okay, so you could also make it about that, but they encouraged me to always make sure I'm at the flagship for the Marriott. So those kinds of things are also fine. So we're going to take just 1 minute here for you to fill in this I am because you statement. And if you want to put it in the chat, if you feel like you are happy to share and want to type it in and call people out by name, you can feel free to do that. These are positives though, remember, positives. I really wish I could have some like Jeopardy song playing for you, but I didn't have it queued up, so I'll just have to hum along for you. Do, 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 do. Rest in peace, Alec Trebek. Okay. All right. So anyone willing to call out who they completed their statement on, go ahead and unmute. You can hold it up if you want to. And if you want to give us a little bit of background, you can do that too.
I will.
All right.
My background is, I lost my dad 2 months ago, and he was pretty cool guy. He was also an educator. And so I wrote, I am an amazing human because you raised me.
That is amazing. And I'm so sorry that your dad's not with you anymore here, but you're also an amazing human, and what a great testimony to your dad and his impact on your life. I love that. All right, anyone else? Go ahead, Miss Hood. Miss, I almost called you Miss like that was your name, and then I was like, wait a minute, you did that for kids. Go ahead.
So I wanted to, this goes out to Mary Geezy and Emily Hood because I was asked to change grades this year, and I am taking a very large risk because they have supported me through this in moving from K to second. So
Amazing. Good job. All right, Tyler, I saw you come off mute and then go back again.
Yeah, so this, I guess, is a shout out to Amanda Kremnitzer, who I'm not sure if she's here, but she's a Vanguard. And I said, I am more motivated to try new things in my classroom because she's always looking for ways to engage in as a literacy specialist and go above and beyond her call of duty. So
I love that. Ever noticed that when people creep out of their, duties and responsibilities into that section of other duties as assigned or just found, right? The found duties and responsibilities, that's when like inspiration happens. And you all have definitely done that, right? You're way outside of what it means on paper to be a teacher. But that's where the magic happens. So that's a great call out, Tyler. Thank you. Anybody else? Let's do one more.
I'll say I am less frustrated and much more successful with Schoology because Amy Cordes responds to emails in a second.
I love it. Don't underestimate the power of responsivity, right? So good. And there's some great ones here in the chat as well. Like, I love these. David, I love this one. I'm much more willing to try new things. Yeah, just like what you just said. I'm more creative because you allowed me voice and autonomy. Love it. I love Cindy, you giving Katie the +1 on her just blossoming this year, which, we all need a cheering section. That's so important, so great of you. And that's modeled behavior, right? That's what it means to step in to lead. So thank you guys so much for doing that. And, I want you to consider that if you've written it down and you've immortalized it in that way, that it probably merits a text or a call or an email or a chat to the person that you kind of had that moment with to reflect and to be grateful. And don't let that go unsaid and unspoken. It just means so much to people to hear that validation. So I would encourage you to send that out for sure. Okay, so we are going to step into our first sort of interactive piece here. And I hope that this is going to look the way that I want it to. So I'm moving you guys to my second screen. So if I look over here, it's because I'm looking at you, but this is where my camera is. So I am going to share. This has kind of been a new way that I've been testing to share some stuff. So I'm sharing with you a whiteboard that has some information on it. So you guys let me know if this like makes you sick, but I'm actually going to just use my touch screen and move stuff around. So is that following with you guys? Can you see it okay? Is it making you dizzy? Anybody need an air sick bag? We're good. Okay. All right. So we are going to take a minute to talk about how being a part of this team actually prepared you for what happened this year, and take a minute to acknowledge sort of the skills that you acquired along the way that maybe you took for granted in the past year. And so I'm showing you this image because for two reasons. Number one, this is about the most gambly thing I do, is this crazy coin game, right? Anybody know this game where you have, like, you know, the coins that you put in the slots, and then your goal, let me use my pen here. Your goal is to try to get the coins to fall right here so that this little bumper will push them, and then all of these extra coins will fall down in. Okay. I don't know if you guys had like home days in your cities when you were, you know, kind of in the summer. For us in Ohio, we had like home days. So every weekend it was a different little borough or a different city that had like a traveling carnival. It was the weirdest. But they always had one of these that they would bring out. And I remember thinking to myself, like, this is the greatest. First of all, you had to be 18 to like belly up at this cart to play this game. And so when I finally arrived, I was like, yes, I'm going to play the coin game. And I probably tossed like all of my Giant Eagle paycheck after union dues were removed for like 3 months on just getting quarters to play in this game. But it's a really great metaphor for what we have been going through this past year. Okay, so I want you to think about the fact that we have a lot of good things. And specifically when it comes to ed tech and like our kind of blended learning approach to teaching and learning, it's awesome, but it comes with a lot of things, and they're all quarters, right? They're all quarters that we have to put in the machine. And if we put in a quarter, chances are we're going to get some more quarters back. But then it gets a little overwhelming. So these quarters that are dangling along the edge right here, those are all the things that we had been learning and acquiring, and we're building up all these skills. And then the tray just fell out and it bombed out on us, right, this year. So I want you to think about those coins or those quarters that were put into the machine for this past year, but also ahead of that, year one of Vanguard, when you were really learning and scaling up. And then all of your teaching sort of career to date. What are those things that you were acquiring that actually helped you, fortified you, made you better prepared for this last year? So I'll open it up for comments, and I'll see if I can take some notes and doodle while we're doing it. Let's see. I can't see if you have a hand up, so if you had oh, go ahead, Rachel, go ahead. You guys are gonna see my very weak chin profile when I'm looking this way. Just go with it. Like, it's a genetic thing. I jumped in the gene pool at a weird time.
You're not the only one. So for me, it's the most important quarter for me was the idea that every challenge has a solution, and it's probably not as hard to figure out as you think it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like problem solving is really like.
Yeah, and
yeah.
You know, Vanguard helped me take those first steps in thinking outside of that traditional pedagogy box, so that when I faced a new challenge, I wasn't scared of it. I was just like, okay, how do we fix this one?
Yeah. Yeah, and that I think the mindset is totally right, but it's also about, have you guys ever seen the video where the lone nut is dancing at a concert? I don't want to like reshare that with, a lot of you have seen it, right? Like this one wackadoo guy is at a concert and he's just dancing in the grass. And for an awkward amount of time, it's probably only 15 seconds, but for an awkward amount of time, he's the only one up and dancing. And then one by one, you see people start to join him. And then it's like a really cool like vibe. We're all dancing together. We're having a moment. People are rolling down the hill. But for a minute, he's the lone nut, right? He's the only guy dancing. In a group like this, in a group like Vanguard, you can be confident in the fact that you're not the lone nut. So it allows us to all dance a little harder and be a little freakier in what we try, because we know we're not the only ones doing it. So that's a really, I can't understate the importance of the confidence that comes from the group atmosphere that you're in. Yeah, the PLN, Katie, is a great point. Like, that's a classier way to say what I just did, but yeah, exactly, PLN. Let's see. Yep. Okay. Comfortable with a wide array of tech tools. Yeah, like just the tech itself is a huge barrier. How many of you had people that you were teaching with over the last however that just they're not there? Even after a year, you're still scratching your head like, how did you make it through? That can be really challenging, especially when people know that you are proficient. Let's just see a physical show of hands. I'll look over on this side. Physical show of hands. How many of you were asked by a peer, a teaching peer, or an administrator to fix some kind of technology problem in the last 12 months? Right, 1000%. All the hands go up. That's unfortunately, that's the side effect of being awesome. So hate to break it to you, but especially now, like that's happened to me since I was, a new teacher in the classroom, but especially now when people found out that I like took this job with Microsoft, they think now I'm like a specialist in network infrastructure and that I should be able to help them reimage their computers. And I'm like, it's the wrong Microsoft. Like, that's like saying with my doctorate, I'm prepared to give you open heart surgery. Wrong kind of doctor, wrong kind of Microsoft employee. But people just make assumptions, right? So that's fine. And if you don't put up good barriers, that can become a bit of a challenge. So let's see what else we've got here. Networking is the PLN piece. I love what you say here, Matt. Path and pace and distance learning. Some students can't access the assigned times, need additional or other times to work, and that's okay. So I'm gonna call that blended learning. You guys had a huge base of understanding and what it meant to be standards-based, mastery-driven, differing paces and paths. You understood the not same day, same way, same time kinds of approaches to teaching. And that's probably the biggest piece. The tech you would have learned on your own because that's the kind of people that you are. But the pieces of pedagogy are the ones that are hardest to plant in the garden and let flourish. And those you did have a good sort of basis of understanding for. So I'll pause here. Anybody else want to just come off mute maybe and give a statement for your preparedness and how it relates to Vanguard?
I'll just elaborate on the growth mindset piece. You said like you already knew that we've done, work with growth mindset, and that's one of like our micro credentials and everything. Well, one of the things I think that Eric and Amy in the Vanguard program does really well is build a sense of pride of what it means to be a Vanguard. Like a lot of us have these posters on our classroom that say like, I'm in the Vanguard program. We get these stickers and we got like cool Schoology t-shirts and stuff. And, we're really proud to be a part of that program. But with that comes a little bit of responsibility. And right now, more than ever, it's super easy to complain and get down in the dumps about teaching and be really negative. And I won't lie, I found myself doing it from time to time even. I mean, I'm not perfect. I'm a human, right? But like coming back to that growth mindset piece and then coming back to that pride I have in being a Vanguard and like, other teachers walk by my classroom and see that sign and stuff, I have to remember and be like, oh, like, I got to set an example for these people. And like, I can't stoop to that level of complaining, and I can't, and fall into that ditch of, talking about all the external controls and things that we can't control in this situation. So I think if I had not been in the Vanguard program for a year or however long I was prior to COVID, I might have found myself complaining more, and I might not have been able to flex my mind as much.
That is such a good point. And I think when it comes time to sort of decide, like the spring was one thing, right? Last year, we all just suffered through and we were like, yeah, we can do this and we can survive. But then signing up for a full year of it, and then living through a year of it and coming back for more, like entering into that mindset of, I can do this because I have this group behind me. I feel prepared, or at least I know that I'm not the only one feeling this way and I have an outlet for that. Most of the districts that I've worked with over the last year have had massive attrition problems. Like we've been in a teacher shortage for as long as we've all been alive. Like there's never been a time when we have had enough teachers to cover all that we need to cover, especially when we talk about the increased focus on social emotional learning, the increased focus on community-based education, where we have people in communities serving their communities and teaching in their communities. who represent the communities that they serve, right? Like that's vitally important, but we've never had enough people to do that. And we will have even fewer if you think about all the people that didn't have a crew like this to roll with through this process. So it's like a stark reality, but it's also such an acknowledgeable benefit to this team and to what you guys have had. David, you put that perfectly. Thank you. Okay, so what I want to move into here is to intro my friend Brad. Some of you, I hope that some of you are on this call that were able to join a session with him offered by iTeach earlier this spring. So for some of you, for a small handful, you might have a little bit of a repeat here, but I'm hoping that it's a valuable repeat. So Brad Montague is a friend of mine and somebody who you know, maybe not by name, but by work. So he was the original creator with his brother-in-law of Kid President. So a few years ago when all those Kid President videos came out, and Robbie was so cute and we all like loved his inspiration and we were using those videos in our classroom. Well, Robbie didn't stay 12. Robbie's off to college now. And so Brad and his wife started what's called Montague Workshop. And they do a lot of just creative development. And you know how teachers do. We take anything cool that we see anybody do and we hack it for education and we hack it for use in the classroom. So over the last little while, he actually worked with iTeach so that there's lots of content and curriculum for every one of the videos that he puts out now available for free to people. And we loved that, but we kept saying to Brad, like, actually, we need more. We need more than that. And so he came up with this great book called Becoming Better Grown-Ups. And you all were shipped, I think, in advance, a map that let's unpack our maps if you have them with you. If you don't have them for this session, it's okay, and you can kind of reflect and use mine. I've got mine. I'm going to turn off my background weirdness here so that I can show you mine without uncorking it. So let me turn this off. Okay, so this is the map, and it's a really cool way to sort of envision, like, I don't know, just the way that we travel through experiences, I think, is the best way. It's called the Maker's Map. If you went to his website and wanted to buy one, it's like $10. So if you have people in your life that you want to get one of these for, they are available. But I just loved it so much that actually when iTeach decided that we were going to launch a maker bus, that we wanted to actually wrap the bus in this entire map. And then Brad was like, that's weird, don't do that. So we didn't do it, but we designed our entire wrap of our maker bus after what this is, because we wanted to help people envision their own sort of path through life, and that it's not just a single path trajectory. And I think to the point earlier about path and pace being different, things change in a moment's notice. And where I wake up, I might be, you know, at Curiosity Crossing. I may be wondering about something. I may be thinking differently about something. And then before you know it, I'm in the sea of insecurity because I've decided that that's a stupid idea and I shouldn't do it, right? So I think the map is like a really good representation of, we travel all across this every day in a million different ways, and you've traveled across it for the last year. And so some days you had, you know, you probably were in the comments, this little desert over here, that's the comments. Well, the comments could be something on social media, or it also could just be like, you know, the other teachers I work with are like Debbie Downers and like nothing's good enough and I can't get any positivity, or the kids are complaining, or they never show up for my live sessions, or like I don't know how to get them engaged, right? So we've all been through these spaces, and Brad put together a really good composite and understanding a story for how that year has made us feel. So he has given me permission, and you know, like, he's also available on YouTube, so I didn't really need it, but I checked with him in advance. He's given me permission to share with you all this story of the dumpster fire in the garden, which I think perfectly sums up this year. And what I'm actually going to do is share with you the recording for when he first told this story to our team at iTeach. It's not the public YouTube link, so there's a little bit more to it, and it's not just the story. So give me just a minute to transition windows here, and I will pull it up for you. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing and then reshare. So much going on 2 screens. I'm like really pushing it to the brink of what it's capable of doing. I'm gonna bring you guys back down here so you don't have to look at my not chin. Present again. All right, here we go. This way, and share. So hopefully you guys can see this now. And I think I'm gonna have to change my sound. Sorry guys, it's a lot of clicking. Mike. Okay, can you guys still hear me? Success, we've launched. All right, here we go. We're gonna pick up just as he's trying to figure out how to share his screen like I just did. So this is Brad Montague talking about the dumpster fire and the garden. I think. Oh, don't be crazy. All right, let me go back out. Let me go back in. Sorry, guys. This is how this happens. Okay, we're going to plan B. And I'm going to just show you the story as it sits on YouTube. And I will try to get that one working for you, okay? Here we go.
The Dumpster Fire and the Daughter by Brad Montague. Once there was this girl, and she was just going about her day. When somebody made her stop, looked, and sound, whoa, hey, it was loud, it was big. It had flames that just getting higher and higher. There it was in front of her, a giant dumpster fire. The dumpster fire smelled like warm trash and animal decay. But for some strange reason, Adele just couldn't look away. It's beautiful, she said. And mesmerized, she just sat and watched it burn. People were adding their trash to it. And she was like, ooh, I want a ton. So she added to the dumpster fire, an angry and thoughtless chore. Then she danced and watched the flames get higher and grow more and more and more. The dumpster fire had grown to become so big that's all you could see. Feeling sad and empty, the girl wondered, is this all it was meant for me? So, through the stink and smoke she walked, then wiped her cloudy eyes. We saw a little woman who looked peaceful, happy, and wise. Why are you smiling? Asked the girl. You're just staring at a pile of dirt. This is the garden, said the woman. Come and tend and heal your hooks. So there was planting and there was tending. The girl missed the quickness of the dumpster fire, but slowly her heart it started mending. Soon there was flowers with so much beauty and a desire to nourish and not to harm them. The seeds grow when we leave the pointless fire and then tend the loving garden. The dumpster fire grew smaller, but never fully simmered down. The garden, it grew and grew and enchanted every soul it found. For every person hearing this, a decision must be made. Be distracted and feed the dumpster fire, or tend the garden of good today.
Okay, so the point of that story is that you can choose to either add to the dumpster fire and lob additional trash on top and watch it burn, right? Which I think we've all been guilty of at times. If you've ever been inside of a teacher lunchroom, that's what happens, right? Somebody comes in with a bad attitude, something happened with one kid and they're like, oh, I can't stand this kid, listen to what he did. And then it's like a one-up game of like, but you'll never believe how bad my day was. And it's like gross to be around, right? So that would be an example of the dumpster fire. Or you can choose to rather plant things in the garden.
So what we're going to do now is come back to our whiteboard. And this is the next activity and our first breakout. So I am going to put you guys into breakouts. And you are going to essentially just help me to create what goes in what. So I'm going to actually not share my screen until after we get back from the breakout room, because then I'll add to it. But I have two pictures. I have a dumpster and I have a garden. And so what I want you to reflect on are the things that you've done this year that were just dumpster things, or things that have happened that have been dumpster things, right? Things that you want to get rid of. Let's let them go. All right. It could be something didn't work for you. What just happened for me, right? Like your tech's not working, something let you down that you really needed. That's a dumpster moment. But then I also want you to generate a list, and this is the most important list, of the things to plant in the garden. What's something that you did over the last year that actually you want to retain that? You want to plant that and let it grow in your practice within the classroom, or in your practice as we look forward to your next year in Vanguard as a coach. What's something that you want to retain and keep in the garden? So those are the two focus areas, right? You've got your dumpster and you've got your garden. And we're going to just spend about 10 minutes from now until right at 5 having discussion on that. What we'll do at 5 o'clock is I'll pull everybody back and we'll take a 5-minute bio break. So if your group ends up finishing a little bit early, go ahead and do that. But at 5:05 or 5:10, depending on how quickly people get back, we'll reconvene here and share out. So nominate a sharer in your breakout group that can help us to fill in our dumpster and our garden. Sound good? You can give me like an actual thumbs up. Perfect. Okay, let me get our breakout rooms going. I don't think you have to do it. Yeah. So you want to just break it up into a manageable size. That's fine.
I got it. All right.
I am killing it because you're helping me. All right. Thank you. All right. Here we go, guys. Breakout rooms. See you soon. All right. Hey, guys. Welcome back. If you want to take your 5-minute bio break, feel free. Hi, little one. What a sweet guy. Or girl. I can't see the outfit. Oh, okay. Yes, I see. Hello, sweet.
Yeah, I'm just staying off camera because she's a wild card and screaming and yelling.
Oh my, I feel you, girl. But nobody puts baby in the corner. All right, guys, welcome back. Thanks for your breakout attention. If you want to take a 5-minute stretch, trip to the bathroom, refill your beverage, feel free. If not, and you are wanting to do a little bit of collaborative playlisting, let me see if I can find the right one. I think I shared this one with you guys maybe a year ago when I did a little bit of a happy hour with everyone, but I'm putting this back into the chat. There's a collaborative playlist there. I think I shared it the right way so that you guys can add songs to it. But this playlist morphed away from a happy hour playlist and into a coaching the coaches playlist. So all the coaches that I teach and lots of other people from various Vanguard teams have contributed to this list. And you will notice themes of the songs being titles that might come to mind when you're coaching people. So this will help to set you into your next year's efforts. And we started making this playlist actually when my team at I Teach was still traveling around the state, going out to sites to coach people. So we had a lot of drive time that we needed songs to fill. So I can't promise that they're all PG. I think I got the non-explicits, but there might slide 1 or 2 in there. Anybody have a new song that they're like totally grooving to right now that's already done their bio break? I'm always looking to get turned on to new tunes. I'm not a big country music fan, but definitely lots of chatter about the, whatever they're called, American Country Music, ACM. Is that what they're called? That just happened this weekend. I'm going to need some of y'all to update your profile pictures on Google. Just hands down, the letter is not going to cut it for me. And this is an encouraging moment where I'm going to speak some truth to you, because clear is kind. That's another Brenéism. I'm going to clearly say to you, let's put a little effort in on these initials, okay? It doesn't even have to be a picture of you. Just put a picture up there. Get that profile pic locked down. Amy, you love your letter. If you are somebody who loves a monogram and like a nice piece of like actual note card with your name and initial on it, then yes, you probably find that like very calming and comforting. Ooh, Taylor Swift. I have not been paying any attention to Taylor Swift other than her re-recording every single one of her songs, which I think is such a power move. And if I were Taylor Swift and could sing and somebody stole my music, I would do the same thing. I think it's genius. And all these teachers who get their stuff like hacked and then put out on Teachers Pay Teachers, you guys should go and make another copy of it and then be like, my version. I think that we should all reclaim our intellectual property. Oh, hey, little buddy. Jonathan, you might have a twin. How sweet. Hi. The cutest. My little guy has that shirt too. He's too big for it now, but it's a cool shirt. It has muscle stripes, so you can see how big your muscles are on your arm. All right, guys, we're at 5:05, so we're going to get rolling again. Hope you had a chance to get something to drink, use the restroom if you need to, and just stand up and move around a little bit. So as we get started, we're going to just take a minute for mindfulness. So if you'll forgive the hippy dippy stuff for a moment, we're going to actually do a little reconnection to get ourselves ready for hour 2. And then we're going to share out our dumpsters and our gardens. So we will run this as a T-chart here in a minute. But before we do that, if you guys will just kind of sit up or stand up, whatever feels good to you. If you have shoes on and you're at a place where it's not weird for you to take them off, you can take off your shoes. And we're going to just do a quick check-in, toe to top, just kind of getting back in check with ourselves. So we're going to take our toes and you're going to point them up towards your kneecaps and then put them down on the ground and stand them up like you're a ballerina dancer. Just a little flex. Wiggle those toes. If you feel like closing your eyes and taking some big breaths, you can do that, but just feel your little piggies wiggle. And then we're going to move up to our ankles, and you're going to point your legs out and kind of move your ankles around in a circle. Mine's a little ouchy. I'll tell you the story why after we're done with this mindfulness. Feel anything that feels weird and ignore it, because that's what big girls and big boys do. And then you're going to move to your knees, just kind of stretching out, pulling back in. All right, for this next one, you're going to pretend like you're trying to fit into a pair of jeans that you bought pre-pandemic, and you're going to squeeze your booty and kind of hold it for a few seconds, and then let it go. Squeeze your booty, hold it for a few seconds, and then let it go, and let that pair of jeans go to Goodwill. And then you're going to come up to your shoulders, and you're going to pull them all the way up to your ears, and then push them back down to the back. All the way up to your ears, push them back down to the back. And then with your head, you're just going to go side to side a little bit, and then a few up and downs. All right, and then cross your eyes and uncross them. Just kidding. If you did that, I'm so glad I got you. All right, so we are moving in here to debrief our dumpster fires and our gardens. And I will share this story, which is a little bit why my ankle is sore with you, to illustrate for you that not every situation we have is so clearly defined that it either goes in the dumpster or it goes in the garden. There are small pieces of each situation, each daily occurrence that we have that probably filter out to both. So here recently we had spring break. It was the first time that I was planning to take some time off since joining Microsoft, because I started like way down the ladder, had no time, had to build it up for a while, but my kids were off. And some of the team knows this, but my in-laws live in Florida. They live in St. Augustine. So if you've ever been to St. Augustine, you know that there's an alligator farm in St. Augustine, and it's like 25,000 degrees hotter at the alligator farm than it is anywhere else in the state of Florida. It smells like an actual dumpster, but only if like alligators were using it. Just lots of reptilian nasal stimulus, which is not a great smell. Okay, it's like hot, it's creepy, but when you have an 8-year-old son and a bunch of nieces, everybody wants to go to the alligator farm every time. And they've just installed a zip line. So Aunt Steph was like, let's do this. We're going to the alligator farm, we're going to zip line. Well, about halfway through the zip line, everyone started freaking out. Everyone's little muscles were tired. And though we had had some great moments, they were starting to just fish out. People who are parents on this call will understand what I mean when I say fish out. It's when your kid absolutely is done and they just like, it's the flop, like they're flopping on the deck of a boat, like they're just done and they're fished. Well, when you fish out on a zip line 40 feet in the air, you're just hanging on your harness, okay? And let me just remind you all, there is no amount of harness that's appropriate to put on the bottom half of this body or any adult body. Like it's never gonna look cute. So everyone's dangling in their harnesses. My niece decided that she was going to completely fish out, and I had to cross a rickety, weird bridge to get to her and then pull her physically along the line to get her to this platform. Well, when I stepped on the platform, I completely rolled my ankle, like stepped in between two boards that were unevenly spaced, and just, I heard the snap and I knew, like it was that visceral, like I might throw up kind of pain. I did not throw up, which later my son reminded me would have been totally cool to see because we were right over top of one of the alligator pits. And he was like, they would have been eating it. And it would, and then I started feeling like I was going to throw up again. So that's what being a boy mom's like. And so the whole time, like that was only halfway through the zip line. The whole rest of the time I was in pain. I was a little agitated because these kids who like had begged to go were like fishing out and acting weird. And then we get down to the bottom. And my niece says, Aunt Steph, you look upset. And I was like, no, I'm not upset. My ankle hurts. Like it was a little tough up there. It was touch and go a few times. And she was like, but it wasn't all bad. We had fun, right? And she wanted me to acknowledge that there were like fun moments that happened, even though that I was in like a massive amount of pain and pretty much over it. And so in that moment, I was reminded of this, right? Like you can have an experience where at some points you just think to yourself, I just want to get through this. Like I want to be done with it. I need some ice and elevation, like, whoa, stat. But there are small things that happen in the middle of that that are things you want to plant in the garden. They were so happy to spend time together. The cousins have not been together in forever because of everything that's been going on. It was like the first time they were back together and had this opportunity to do something they've been waiting to do. And so despite feeling like my foot needed to be amputated and like I was totally agitated with everyone's general demeanor, they had a good time. So that's how you learn to separate things. You can acknowledge that some things are crap without saying the whole thing is crap, right? And that's something that I think we've really got to practice. That's a muscle you have to flex and check in with, just like we just had to check in with our bodies to remember that we had feet because we've been sitting all day. So we're going to spend some time now, and I'd love to just have you all share if you elected, sort of voluntold somebody in your group that they need to be the sharer, and just give me sort of the highlight reel, like maybe the one or two things that you really felt like needed to go in the dumpster. We're not going to do this anymore. We're not even going to think about this anymore, versus things you want to plant in the garden. What are the things you want to take forward, whether it's actions and activities or just a mindset or a disposition or an approach to things. Okay. So again, I'm sorry, you guys are going to have to look at my middle school / high school teacher Scritchel Scratchel while I'm taking notes on this. You elementary school teachers with your beautiful handwriting on a board, I can't handle it. So anyone want to volunteer to go first here? Oh, you guys did a list on Candy. Look at you, you're the best. I heard a hand. Eric, can you call me out to people? Katie maybe, or Scott?
I'll go. It's Katie.
Perfect. Okay.
One of our biggest dumpsters that we just want to leave this year and move on from is schedule. This was for high school, elementary specials, and also elementary general. Thinking about our garden, we'd like to keep up the connections that we made with families. Continue giving kids feedback. We felt like that was something that we grew in. And supporting people taking risks and feeling appreciated by our administrators.
Good. Risk. That's a plus sign for anyone who was wondering. It's not going to church. Okay, great. Scott, you're up.
I'm going to do the gardens first. There were a lot that we came up with, but building classroom community was a greater focus. That was a big garden piece for us. And department collaboration, more than perhaps normal. And then a greater equity focus to ensure equal access to everyone because they absolutely needed it.
Yeah. I think the equity for access is so important. And like, how many drums had we beat about that ahead of time? And it did, until we had this moment where it really became like a no-go line, did we really start to challenge ourselves to fix that problem?
Some things we said that were dumpster fires was the constant, chatter over things like eliminating the zero in middle school. And then some schools had this rule where no grades below a C, and if students showed up, then they had to be marked as meeting expectations, even if there was nothing produced. And then, and it has to be said, that the constant dumpster fire conversation over FCPS at network issues and things of that nature.
Did you say, I don't know what that is, but STPS?
FCPS, our system.
Oh, I got you. I was like, STPS.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, just network issues.
Yeah. Got it. I'll just put network. Yeah, that's good. Tell me more about these grading policies. Were these like just like localized things that, or just trying to decide what are we going to do? Like that anticipation of like, what should we do? We don't know what to do. Does it count? Does it not count? Do we hold them back? Do we not hold them back? Just that general feeling or something more specific?
Well, the one that I can speak to with a little more expert voices in middle school, you cannot give a student lower than a 50%. Even if that means no work submitted, it's still a 50. And it's that constant chatter over, are we giving 50% for nothing? Are we now assigning nothingness that tier score of 50%? And so you have that group of people versus the group that recognizes the mathematical, equity issues when we're talking about a 50, which is still an F for horrible work or no work turned in, versus a 0, which could absolutely torpedo a kid's term. So it's just that constant struggle between, trying to mesh those two belief systems together.
Right. Yeah. And I think it begs the greater conversation that a lot of people have been forced to have around like standards-based grading versus numerically quantified grades. A 50 doesn't matter to me, just like a 0 doesn't matter to me. I need to know if they know what they're supposed to know. Right. So that mastery-based progression, I think many districts are starting to envision the ideation of like what that looks like in practice moving forward. Great. Okay. Who we got next? Thanks for that, Scott. Rachel, you want to go ahead?
Sure. The main part of our conversation focused around teachers' perceptions of their performance versus other people's performance, and comparing ourselves to each other. And we all shared that we had moments this year where we had to say, hey, as a vanguard, I am struggling right now. So if you're struggling too, that's okay and normal. So yeah, one of our things that we're planting is, more openness to sharing our ideas and our experiences with each other. How the things that we might present to each other in professional learning sessions are kind of a highlight reel, and they don't always represent our day-to-day teaching lives, and yet people perceive it that way. So keeping it real was one of our flowers, as was patience. Just the amount of patience we've had to cultivate with students and with ourselves, giving ourselves the time and space that we need to grow and to meet the challenges that we're experiencing right now.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to put that just as time and space. It's sort of a lot of things, right? Time and space for self, time and space for students, for families. I think a lot of times in the past, I'll speak about myself as a teacher. I made assumptions about what could be accomplished at home. And when those things weren't accomplished, I made assumptions about what people weren't doing to help that get accomplished. About 3 years before I left the classroom, I completely stopped giving homework that was performative in nature. And it was all simply targeted to like, you didn't meet mastery level, so here's what you need to do. And part of that became really clear through the pandemic in my own house. It got me to check the assumptions that I used to hold as a teacher when my children were up in my house. And I realized that there's so much busy work, right, that floats out. And I think teachers feel like parents want to see it, right? And parents feel like teachers expect to have it done perfectly to the letter of the law. And so there's like this massive missed high five that came under the microscope, where we like have expectation versus reality, and both sides of that there's no clarity around it. So I think everyone just giving time and space to all parties involved in learning was really a good place to be. Yeah, very good.
One last point is that in terms of what teachers have been doing this year, every single thing we've done in the last year has been representative of personal growth in some way.
Heck yeah, say that again. Everything you've done to get through, to climb the mountain and to survive is absolutely evidence of huge growth.
And to take it a step further, what you just said sort of, sparked for me the idea, the same thing is true for students.
Mm-hmm.
Like, their learning the last year has been incredible growth too, because just the same way as everything is new for us, everything is new for them.
Right. Great points. Okay, let's move to Matthew. I think your hand's up. Yeah, Matthew. Sorry, we're not familiar like that yet.
You can call me whatever you want, really.
Okay. No, your turn. Go for it.
All right. One of the things I want to start with is like kind of like our dumpster fire there. It's honestly been like the negativity. That's kind of where we started. Like, yeah, it's been hard. Like, it's been hard for everybody. Even if the best teachers, have really struggled with things, and I get like the need to vent, because actually like our positive, our garden, things we want to keep growing was, the venting and the connections that we're making with people who we may have never, spoke to as much, in our school, that may be in different content areas or grades, that have really helped, share ideas and talk about struggles and working together. But the negative attitudes over things that are like little and like in the end of the day, like really insequential, that just like really lower the morale, of teachers, which are, their morale's already low enough. And instead of, I feel like, building things up and trying to find a bright spot, they're there to kind of bring it down. And so I feel like as vanguards, our job is to kind of, be those people who bring it back up, despite what other people are saying, and allowing to have the conversations to build and you have that growth mindset and ditching that fixed and negative idea.
Yeah, so I definitely view Vanguard as like chief motivation officers, right? Like, this was a role that really early on, when I was first building the team, like, you're not punitive, you don't have authority over anyone, you're a peer and a colleague. And this is going to be especially important as you transition into that coaching role, right? It's like, you don't have evaluative capacity in the relationship, but you can absolutely be a chief motivating officer. and it's your job to help deliver to people the answer to DERM, which is something I say to myself all the time. Does it really matter? DERM. Like, what you're getting worked up about, is it DERM? Like, the thing that you feel like you can't move past and can't accomplish anything, does it really matter? The tech not working the exact way you subscribed that it would today, does it really matter? Or can you still accomplish what you want to accomplish in a different way, right? So that's a really, that's something that I started with my own self-talk even before I left the classroom, but has served me so well as a coach to help have those conversations about, does it really matter? And not say DERM to somebody, right? But to describe to them, and we'll talk about this more in our session tomorrow, like some of the ways that you can branch those conversations. But tell me more about why this makes you feel so overwhelmed. What about this feels very high stakes? And do you find that there's a way to solve this problem, or is this an unsolvable problem? If it's an unsolvable problem, then that's also effort and energy we don't need to spend, right? We can focus on something we can do to affect change somewhere else. So really good. Thank you for that. Matt, was that all, or did you have some more?
Oh, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Anne, did I see your hand up? Oh, Laura, I'm sorry. You're on the separate side of me, so just don't let me forget you. Okay, go ahead, Anne.
Sorry. I really enjoyed the conversation in my group, so thank you for that, for allowing that. I'm going to start with a garden as well. We talked about some of the same things that were talked about in the other groups, but that collaborative mindset that we were able to establish, and then that trust also that you're establishing among that mindset or with your colleagues. Hold on, I have to log in. BTI.
Oh, you're fine.
I have to connect. Hold on. Okay, there we go. And then another thing that we wanted to add to the garden was the establishing, the kind of similar to what Rachel said with students, was so the students have learned so much in terms of independence and time management. They've had to, learn, as well as teachers. We've learned, an immense amount of things with Schoology. We probably know that inside and out. And we've had the opportunities we talked about with guest speakers too, allowing to have those virtual guest speakers, which has been great. The dumpster fires, we kind of reiterate probably a lot of the things that everybody else has said here, but the frustration with concurrent teaching, and then how to verbalize that,
Right.
And then, talking about attendance and talking about turning on the cameras, it's just been kind of frustrating. So finding that balance, we talked about like kids not turning on their cameras, but also like asking them like, why don't you turn on your cameras? So having to meet them halfway and have some understanding about that too. So
yeah. So I'd bucket like a lot of that. What I'm hearing is just like a policy procedure, guffaw, which, to be honest with you, if you hadn't experienced dumpster fires in those areas, you would be the only school district in the nation or in the world that didn't experience those. So like, if it helps to have a league of, extraordinary gentlemen beside you in that way, every single person felt that. But it doesn't make it easier in the moment, right? Because what happens when we have gap policies or procedures is that then it comes into this negativity space where we don't actually know. Yes, it does really matter, but we don't actually know how to fix it in the moment and fix it at scale. We might have a personal solution or idea, but how do we project that, communicate that, and then fix it at scale so that actually our reality is shifted? And I think everybody who's in like a classroom level position right now got a little bit of an understanding of what it's like to kind of take a great idea or a great practice and how hard it is to scale that across, a district or multiple districts. So yeah, that's great feedback, Anne. Thanks for that. All right, Laura, you're up.
All right. Hello. Our group, we talked about, in terms of the garden, one of the things we talked about was new ways of using tech. And so just innovating, I think, was a big piece, kind of sums up everything that we talked about when it came to garden things, using tech in new ways, whether it's getting a webcam and taking that around our classroom and sharing it, using it throughout wherever we go, or using an extended screen with a projector, all of that. And then we also talked about doing labs in secondary science and how challenging that is in the, sorry, I have a 2-year-old who's really excited right now in the background.
No, I like, I need a hype person in my crew. So
yeah, that's my girl. Yep.
She's up next.
I'll bring her over. She loves talking into my mic. But doing labs concurrently, figuring out how to make that work. And I've had multiple teachers tell me that they're having the person that's in the classroom do the lab and connect with 2 other people or the rest of whoever is at home
in a breakout room and talk to them that way. And so just finding new ways to do things that we've done all along, given the new restraints that we have. In terms of dumpster fire, the whole issues with the Wi-Fi and the network going down, definitely want to leave that in the dust. And yeah, that was pretty much it.
Yeah, that's a go, no go. Something that you said sparked this moment for me though, and I want you to kind of think about this as you're, envisioning how we get things moving forward in a positive direction. First of all, we have a ton of stuff over here that we want to plant and grow in the garden. So like collectively, we have a huge amount. And I did not forget about you, Sarah, you're up next. But we also have some things that show up initially as challenges that we need to be able to life cycle into the garden, right? So they might feel like a total dumpster, but actually there's a nugget in there that we can learn from to create something new. That's where big ideas come from, right? Like that's where the big spur on to think about tackling standards-based grading or mastery assessments, right? That's where that comes from. That's where some of these things like innovation and innovative practices come as a response to something that's initially chucked at the dumpster. So I think that there's some qualification that all of these things started out in the dumpster. We were all living in a dumpster in March of last year, right? Like the dumpster was hot and we were all in it. And what we managed to do was actually upcycle things out of the dumpster and turn them into innovations as well. So don't lose sight of that. It doesn't, just because something's in the dumpster doesn't mean it has to stay there. You have some empowerment to shift that focus a little bit. Okay, Sarah, you're up.
Okay, so I think we've said a lot of the things that my group talked about, but I was just kind of thinking that maybe we can narrow it down to like this feeling of guilt, like the guilt that I haven't been able to reach every kid and build relationships with every kid like I've been able to do in the past because they're not showing up to class or maybe their grade's a little bit lower. So just that feeling of guilt. I'm not my best. I'm not doing as well as I would be doing if I had all of my kids in front of me every single day. So just something we need to let go of is just that feeling of guilt.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would think that you would be a liar if you said that you didn't have some kind of guilt over something professionally. Like we all have all kinds of things that we feel bad about, that, I wasn't a great mom sometimes. I wasn't a great grad student. I wasn't a great director. I wasn't a great wife. And that's daily. That pandemic or no pandemic, I fall short in a lot of ways a lot of times, like we all do. But I think specifically when it comes to like the professional teacher inside of us, there's been a lot of guilt that we've kind of taken on over this last year. What I want to challenge you with is that guilt in unusual circumstances is a natural response, right? It's a natural emotional response to what's happening in some external stimulus where you feel out of control. But when you have that kind of knee jerk to go into the guilt talk, like into the guilty self-talk that happens, it's the same thing that, a lot of self-help people will tell you, like the way that you talk to yourself in those moments is far worse than you would ever talk to somebody else. Mm-hmm. So try to separate self from the guilt a little bit and ask yourself, like, would I go down to the teacher across the hall from me and say, actually, you didn't do your best. You didn't show up for kids today the way you should have, right? Actually, like the way that you did that was, it wasn't your best work. And so I need you to try better, try harder next time. You would never do that, right? But we do it to ourselves all the time. So when you start to personify that and like remember that you're giving other people better than you give yourself, it sort of disrupts that script a little bit. And yes, having an eye on growth and improvement and iteration is good, but we have to stop it before it gets to a point of just feeling like we're heaping on ourselves. And that's not just about work, right? Like that's true in life. Like that's true if you're a parent, you have that script. That's true if you are competitive in something. It's true with your family, relationships. So that's something for me, guilt is going in the dumpster. I've felt it too. Like I would be lying again if I said that I hadn't harbored that a little longer than even my brain tells me I should, right? Knowing what I know and coaching other people how I coach people, I wasn't even giving myself a third of that grace, right? A third of that understanding. And so that's really challenging to think about. Those are all really good. Oh, good Lord. The bearded dragon is trying to escape. Sorry, there was a loud crash behind me. Cheeto wants out. So these are all really good. And again, I want you to look here. I know that I wrote some bigger than others, but if we really look at the list, there are more in the garden. And that's good. And even if there weren't, that would still be good, because that meant that we could acknowledge the things that we want to keep in the dumpster. And, you know, as we sort of move into this next phase of what we'll talk about today, and as we, you know, approach our session tomorrow, I really want you to think about this as an evolution. You know, your life cycle as a Vanguard member has been rapidly accelerated. And I don't mean that you were able to like cut off time in this lead section before you get to coach. I mean that you have compressed so much experience into 1 year as an educator, as a Vanguardian, all of that, that you now can go into this third phase with like a huge arsenal. And so as you move into the role of coach, and in tomorrow's session is really going to be around like, what are the skills, the dispositions, but also like tips and tricks of the trade. I've been doing this for a lot of years, and every year I'm like, all right, it's sort of like when you, over winter break, you're like ordering a new planner. Anybody did that last year? And like, then you're like, why did I order a planner? I'm throwing it out the window, right? But like, you want a new planner, you want a fresh desk area, you like dump all the ungraded papers off your desk at work into the trash at the end of the semester, and you're like, freedom, like a very Braveheart moment. We all want that too as we enter into new phases in our professional life. So as you enter into this new phase, we're going to give you some of those sort of like invigoration pieces, tips and tricks, things that have worked, things that haven't worked. But before we sort of close the notebook on lead, I want you to do a little bit of some preparation for how you would qualify the things that you've really been able to do. So I know this is going to seem a little bit like, you know, great. I hate to talk about myself like this. Okay. We all do. We're teachers. Nobody likes to brag on themselves. We're the worst at it in education. And it took me leaving education and going corporate to realize no one else has a problem with it. These jokers love to stand around and talk about how great they are. So we need to get in the game, okay? So we're gonna do one more round of breakouts. Hopefully, I think it'll randomize so that you'll be with different people. But I want you to come up with your talk track. And it's okay if you can just focus on like, I survived, I wore pants, I got up away from my desk and walked around for 20 minutes today, right? Like basic life skills are fine here, but let's push a little deeper than that. And I want you to come up with a list of maybe 5. If you can make 5, that would be, you know, mastery level quality. 5 things that you've done that you're really proud of from this year. And I'd like you to be, you know, pretty targeted about them. And I'd like you to be focused on this area of leadership. How have you modeled behaviors? How have you led others to discover who they really are? How have you been the example? And again, not every day in every way. We all know that we're going to miss that mark if we set it for ourselves. Every way, every day is not the expectation for excellence, because we're all human, right? But what are the ways that you have accomplished that? So we're going to go into another breakout. We'll do it for, let's call it like 6 minutes. Eric, can we do that? And I want you guys to practice your talk track. These are the I am statements, and I did, okay? So it's gonna be uncomfortable for you, especially if you don't know each other well. But after somebody shares the 5 things that they really feel like they accomplished this year and that they have led up on, everyone can give them some affirmations, whether that's some snaps, some claps, some woohoos, you know, whatever, okay? A little bit of like, whatever you want to do, I don't care, but give them some kind of verbal and visual acknowledgement that they were brave enough to kind of share, and then coming back together, saying who did them. Okay, we don't want to like create a weirdness for anybody, but I'd like to kind of use this graphic. This is another Brad graphic that he lets me use with permission. It's just fly and help each other fly, and that's what Vanguard is so great at, right? That you can fly and be proud of that and acknowledge it, but that also you're like lifting everybody else up to fly with you. So it's not this like exclusive club of flyers, okay? Get out of here, Delta, with your business class seats. Nobody can afford you anyway. So we're gonna go ahead and what I'm gonna do is try to take down these how have you flown moments in a list. And then we'll see how well I do that as people are calling them out. So I would appreciate it if you would unmute and say it so that I don't have to look at both screens. But if you want to put it in the chat, maybe Amy or Eric, you guys can give me some call outs too if you see them popping in there. Sounds good? All right, everybody get ready to rumble. You're going to have to just unmute and go. So this is like verbal mud fighting. Hit it.
Finishing micro-credentials.
Yes.
Amazing multitaskers.
Mm-hmm.
New mother, new job.
New mother and?
New job.
Wow. Everyone clap.
Supporting the IAs in their building in learning technology and being that safe person they could go to.
What's an IA?
Instructional assistant.
Thank you.
Forward.
Failing forward. Good.
Communicating with parents and creating screencasts for parents.
Getting kids to interact and actually talk to each other instead of, as I call them, being robots.
Mm-hmm.
And that has been a year-long struggle. I feel like it's finally happening.
And also, Susan, like, welcome to kids, right? Even when we were face-to-face in classrooms, this is hard to accomplish. So
right.
The fact that we've been able to crest that wave is like good, either face-to-face or virtual, but just an exceptional and extraordinary feat the other way. All right, hit me with it.
Tackling a new job in a new building, new grade level with new colleagues.
Yeah, the change on top of the change is a lot, right?
Recruiting teachers to join Vanguard.
Yeah, recruiting skills. That deserves a Z. Perfect. What else? Anybody have any that they were able to share that were moments from like learning and sort of the interaction between they and their students? We've got a couple here, but those are the ones that I think will build you up to sustain you moving forward, right?
I said better listening. Like, is it wait time or do they need a sentence starter or do they need you to restate the question? Because I hope I carry that back into my non-virtual world, because I really realized sometimes it wasn't that they didn't want to answer, it's that they missed the question or they didn't understand it.
Yeah, that listening to learn versus listening to respond is so important. And I think we learn that as we deal with like adult relationships and how to be effective, but we don't often maybe project those skills into the classroom with students. That's such a great learning. Wonderful.
Kind of on that note would be continuing to find creative ways to build relationships with kids whose faces you may have never seen before. And that's was the main thing in my garden, I guess you could say, and something that I'm not anywhere near where I'd like to be, but I think we're all going to need to continue to do that. So
yeah, I love that. And you're right. And I think some of those things we even carry back when we do resume, right? That we've always just sort of relied on, like, week one, welcome to school. Here's how we roll here. Getting to know you games. Let's play a game of getting to know you bingo, where you find someone who has, you know, like it's the same things that we've done for so long that we're challenged now to do different things. Great. Let's take two more.
Helping students who are new to the country feel welcome and cared for during a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Amplifying the voices of teachers in the building so that they can contribute to other teachers' learning and growth.
Yeah, and isn't that sort of like a sort of mission critical aspect of coaching too, right? Is that amplification. And often as a coach, as you move into sort of this third tier, it's about orchestrating resources and manipulating the amplification of that voice to align things in a way that actually gets something accomplished, right? that now we can actually say, I heard from teacher X, I know we have X resource, here's what we'd like to try, and you deliver it to someone and that it's ready to say yes to. Like that resource orchestration and voice orchestration is a lot of the role of the coach. Yeah, sort of that General MacArthur version of completed work. Like whenever you go to seek the approval to do something, that you've already got it mapped out and ready to roll. Beautiful. All right, one more.
I have another one.
Hit it, Susan.
Just like finally, when you get those kids who like you haven't seen, and you finally get them like on board and back on track. And that's kind of happened this week for me with one of mine, and it's really good to see.
Yeah, geez, did we ever think that that was going to be an issue, right? Just to get kids to like show up, get on track. You know, we've always had those kids that are sort of hard to engage, but this layer, a year later, you know, to be thinking, wow, I've finally gotten to the point where, and it's different with this group of kids, right? In the spring, we had the pleasure and the privilege of having relationships with those kids before things hit the wall. This group of kids, we had to build that on the fly. So a huge hill to climb, and what a great accomplishment to end on this list. So I'm going to zoom out. You guys have flown in fantastic ways. And I have learned a lot about that today, but I also hear that from Eric on the regular when we check in. There's no amount of bragging that is left on the table when it comes time to talk about this group and what you guys have accomplished. So I think it's really important for you to know, when I talk to Eric, when I talk to Amy, when I talk to Kevin, you all are the focus point of effort and energy, because they know the amazing things that you're doing. And their job and my job in continuing to support you is to help you fly, so that you can do the same for others, right? It's this continual cord of pulling people up and like letting them loose. So we've got just a few minutes remaining here, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Am I sharing my screen?
No.
Well, heads up, guys. That would have been nice to know ahead of time. That's fine. All right, you can see it now. Here's our list. You guys are like the people who let me have spinach in my teeth. Like, be a friend, okay? So
the kids do it to us all the time.
I know. You
They
guys
don't
just
tell
totally
us.
pulled that 8th grade stuff where you were like shaking heads and making eye contact, and seriously, you have no clue what's going on. Okay, so this is the list I made, and I'm going to share this all so that you guys will see it after our time tomorrow too. But we've got an amazing list of all kinds of great things that you've done to be able to fly. And if I zoom out, you guys can see all the stuff that we've covered today, and we'll add to it for tomorrow. But again, I'm really grateful, because today we've been able to hit a little bit of a pause button, not a big one, because we don't have time for that, right? We've got to keep going on all cylinders. A little bit of a pause button to just reflect on this year of leadership and growth and development that you've survived. You've made it through. Almost to the end block. And so I just wanted to leave the last 5 minutes or so for any questions that you have of me before we end our time for today. Again, knowing we'll have some other touch points, but anything that I said today, shared today, showed today that you want more clarity on or information, or if you just have a weird question that you want to ask, I'm here for it. So thank you guys for your attention and time. Everyone stayed on. You guys were so sweet to do that. I know it's the end of the day, and I really appreciate you all. And I love seeing those babies, so keep bringing them. All right. See you guys on the